My name's Ronald Haysom, Haysom, and for Mary that's important. I was born in Northgate in Victoria, in Melbourne, and the years of my childhood were pretty rough. My father really abandoned his family very early in peace, and later on I found that he put his age down and joined the army in 1939. It's the only thing I found to his credit. He wasn't a very good man. Children don't really know when their parents are in trouble. They sort of just go on their way. I started to work for a newspaper in Victoria when I was 15, Melbourne Truth, and I stayed there till I was 16 plus, where I joined the army. I put my age back to so I could get in the army as 18, and after being in the army for about 6 or 8 months I applied to join the AIF. I wanted to do that because I wanted to go overseas. As in the AMF you held in Australia. There was 5 fellas that went to school at Wild Street in Northgate, and the Japanese had taken over most of Malaya into Singapore, and we thought they were going to attack Australia. So the 5 of us thought it'd be a good idea that we join the army. So that's why we put our age back, and we all joined the army. We all went down to the drill hall. We all got the papers. I signed my mother's name. They took theirs home, and we all sent them in. Anyway, it was only a few weeks and we were in the army at Caulfield Racecourse. We were inducted. I remember that very first day, we had a meal and somebody stole my new hat. And I remember as I walked out of there, I pinched somebody else's. So somebody must have been an extra hat somewhere. But from there, we went out to Ringwood, out near Ringwood. Ringwood out, what they call the place, Park Orchards, where we did 6 weeks infantry training. And then we were marched out to different companies. I went out to signals. I became a signaller. The first thing they taught me was Morse code. I became a very good wireless operator. After about 4 weeks, we were sent to Brisbane, and I was operating high-powered wireless sets out of St Lucia University. The transmitters were just on the river near the university, and after about 6 or 8 weeks of that, I was getting tremendous pains in the head from all using Morse code day and night. It drove me mad. So I asked to be able to transfer out of there, and I went into a signal company, a construction company. Now, being with that company, the signallers, it changed my life completely. It was hard work, solid work, and I believe work that helped Australia build themselves something for defence. Australia was defenceless, so it had communications were virtually nothing. Darwin had been bombed. There was no communication out of Darwin. So, as signallers, our first job was to redo the overland telegraph from Alice Springs to Darwin. It had one telegraph wire and 2 ordinary wires, and out of that, communication was very hazardous to get it. Our job was to put another 4 wires, build up the signal strength of the telegraph, and that took about 7 or 8 months to do. And at long last, the voice came out of Darwin. We did the whole of the city of Darwin, reinforced all the local telephone lines through the place. Nearly all the telephone system was underground, and when we did the first lot, we found that white ants ate the cables. They had to do it all again, but this time sealed the pipes and filled them with creosote. So after working in Darwin until end of May 43, we were sent back home to Victoria. Our base camp there was Belcombe, down on the peninsula. And we had got a hurried or a secret job to be done, in secret. We were flown back to Brisbane, and got on a boat called the Wandana and loaded up with signal equipment. Their job was to complete a telephone line from north of Portland Roads in Queensland to the end of Cape York, over to Horn Island, and lay undersea cable to Port Moresby. When that was done, it took some time to do. Australian War Office had an instant communication from New Guinea. Before, it was wireless, coded message. But now they could talk. Colour printer, instant, it didn't have to code it. It made a big difference to what happened in New Guinea. This was about end of 43. I won't keep the dates. That job, we got the award from the government, a big award, a citation for our troops. Coming back from there, we came home again, and there was big bushfires in Victoria, and around Colac, Darwin, all that part of Western Victoria, and burnt all the telephone systems, burnt the towns right down. Our job then was to try and build them up. That was something again. Most of our blokes married the girls from the local towns. Yes, that happened, yeah. But we were there for quite a few weeks. The poles had been burnt where they're just dangling on the wires. You know, we had to cut the poles off and put new poles in, and as you build the system up, that took quite a while. Now, when I came back from leave, that's when I met my wife-to-be. I was introduced to her. She was only 16. I was only a boy myself. I joined the army when I was 16 and 11 months in January, and that was 1925. Getting into the army, I put my age back to 24, so I was 18. I could be called up. They don't call it up. We went anyway. Anyway, after being in the army for 6 months, there was a group that came back from Cape York. They built some of that line up into Cape York, but they came back when I happened to got out the was operating, you know. And I said, that's no good, because all I can service inside Australia. I'm going to join the AIF. So I got the papers in the orderly room and signed my mother's name. I wanted to join the AIF. My age now is the 11th of the 7th, 1923. So I'm now 19. So that caused no more trouble until I got discharged. I had these 3 bloody birthdays. But anyway, the army now reckon they know my right birthday, the 25th, 1925. But all went well, mate. I'll tell you a bit more about the overland telegraph line. It was 1,000 miles we did. There was 5 units of 90 men each. We had 40 miles each to do. Put four wires up, 2 pair of wires. Put a booster every 50 miles, I think, to boost up the telegraph signal, you know. And I picked up hepatitis at Foul Creek, drinking foul water. Finished up in Alice Springs Hospital for 6 weeks on jellies and all that stuff, trying to get my liver back together. I'm in the King River by the railway bridge, full of snakes, crocodiles at night. That was great. My first day back there, when I come back from Alice Springs, that's where they dropped me off at the camp. So I slept in the tent. We had iron beds. When I woke up in the morning, the snakes were all crawling around there, crawling around the poles, tent poles. God damn it, oh, what a place. Anyway, once we'd been there for a while, the snakes went somewhere else, you know. So from there went into Catherine. I was with the provost there till I was moved on to Berrimah Road. That's just far from the jail where Lindy Chamberlain was incarcerated there. And from there we moved into Railway Hill in Darwin. That's where we started to do Darwin proper. get the cables and all that going. At the wharf was the greatest memory of my life. At the wharf there was the, I'm trying to think of the boat, laying on its side. The Japs had hit it with a bomb and it was full of mines out in the ship, blew the ship to pieces. There was 22 wharfies under the wharf there having a smoko. That bomb turned the ship into Neptuna and killed every man there. So I remember that so well. But there's the things. And when we were doing telephone lines around the airstrip at Darwin, we'd put lines up and the bombers either coming in or coming out, coming home, we'd pick those wires up in undercarriage. They couldn't get off quick enough, get down. That woke us up. The war was only around the corner, you know, us blokes. Yeah. So, I just got these vivid things that happened to me, you know. But I was lucky I was in signals. My heroes in the war were the infantry, and I would have liked to have been in infantry. My next job was to fly with a new section, air defence signals up in New Guinea. The job I had with my people was just making sure aircraft got onto the airstrip and so on. Air defence. And from there, we were taken to Morotai, where that picture was taken. Already when we were there was a lot of Japanese prisoners of war being brought out of Singapore. Singapore jail, when I first saw it, Salarang Barracks is the first thing that hits you, a great barracks where the Japanese servicemen stayed. The big compound, I remember that when we had 2 battalions in there, our troops, and the prisoners. There was lots of humpy shops, you know, Chinese or Malayan shops all down one side of it. There was a big tower as you go through the pagoda type front. Our job was to get a wireless set working from there to Darwin, in there to get communications going and keep it going. The cells, I'm trying to go back to it now. You couldn't believe that people could actually live in there. I remember the chapel they built. When I went back again 62 years later, the chapel had been rebuilt outside the wall. And to remind you, it was very stark, but don't forget it was 62 years later, trying to remember what it was like then to what it was when I saw it again. Yeah, in Singapore, and then I went on to Borneo itself. That's where I started to get sick. As a signaller, I wasn't infantry where you saw dead bodies and all that. I was a signaller. And there I suddenly got introduced to dead bodies, Japanese soldiers, just floating in bloated ponds and all that, and it really threw me. See, our infantry was still there mopping up at the time, you know, and they shot them. They didn't recover Japanese bodies. They recovered their own. There was a few, but that threw me. I had no trouble with the aircraft. I was on the aircraft. We were unarmed half the time, except when the Mitchell bomber flew in that. But I didn't have any worry. In the bush, it didn't worry me at all. It's funny how you get over that, you know. If you're worried about it, you'll be frightened to go anywhere, you know. You got decent shit, boots on, shorts that I had. But the bush never worried me, not at all. I was on Morotai, in Borneo and Mebourne, and then our troops had got down in towards Singapore. We'd already had the troops go into Singapore and took over the jail. That was when our group followed and we went into the jail. Jail was to keep communications with Darwin, and when that was done, it didn't take too long. Our job was to look after the sick soldiers, help feed them, do things for them and get them ready to bring them home, walking wounded. After 6 weeks, I was told I could come home. I came home on a 45,000 tonne English liner, Circassia, with 2,000 POWs, nurses and all the rest of it. We came home via the Thunder Strait, Ceylon, down into Fremantle, where we had a few days to leave, using the ship as a hotel, which was good. Then the long trip round to Melbourne, and going across the Bight, one of the POWs jumped off the back of the ship. I myself always felt we had use of telephones and that in Fremantle. And I saw he must have heard something when he rang home to say he's coming home. Maybe his wife wasn't there, maybe his girlfriend married somebody else, whatever. The ship searched for 4 hours looking for him. Anyway, they came into Port Melbourne, or it'd be October, late October 45. And I'd already rang my wife to be, for myself. Anyway, I was first off the ship, believe it or not, and I was allotted a bus right down near the gate. I couldn't believe it. I walked out there, I'm 10 feet away from the gate, there's my wife to be, and my mother and my sister. Couldn't believe it. What a way to come home. I was yellow as a Chinaman, I remember that, with all the apron we had, you know. So anyway, we went out to, I forget the camp, we went out to Heidelberg Way. I had 2 weeks leave, and when I came back, that's when Gwen and I got engaged and we married. She was 19 and I was just coming on to 21. And I went back to Malcolm and I thought it was time to come out. So I got discharged fairly quickly. I went back to the newspapers, they had my job there. I was in the linotypes, and I looked after linotypes all my life really. And I was with the Melbourne Truth for 24 years, including the war years. I married Gwen the year I got out of the army, 46. And we had 2 children, Robbie 8 years later and my daughter a little later. And I was quite ill. Something is wrong with me. From what I'd seen, it threw me. The prisoners of war that had all the skin eaten off their body, and it was terrible. And eventually, and luckily my wife came all the way, we never argued. We came to Brisbane to live in 1964. Yeah, I had a bad time. I found it very hard to walk across the comproom. A lot of giddiness and surety. And I'm working with machinery, you know. And often I'd come out of where I worked in Melbourne Truth. I did some of their night work. I'd sit on the gutter because I was frightened to get up and stand because I'm going to fall over, you know. An awful feeling. The army tried every which way to find out what was wrong with me, but it was all in the head, in there. The DVA sent me to this place out at Windsor, Federation Street. It was a nursing home of some sort. And I really didn't know what was going to happen to me. I was in the ward there for a couple of days, and then they wheeled me away one morning, and they put a plug in my mouth and 2 whackers on my head. And before I knew what it was, I had this bloody shock treatment. It might have been 1 or 2, I don't know. But the next morning, I felt as good as gold. I actually got up and went by tram, I think it was then, where my wife worked. Went in to see her, had another bloke with me. And I was so lucid that I couldn't believe it. And I really had no trouble since then. That's 50 years ago. It's incredible. And I saw one of these psychiatrists, and he said, it was all caused by your childhood. Nothing to do with the war, he said. You know, they wiped me clean. But up here in Brisbane, different story up here. They looked after me well. But I'm still alive today because of DVA. There's a lot of criticism at the moment on DVA, but fair dinkum, Jeff. I couldn't have been treated better. Well, I was a wireless operator, I was a linesman, I was a cable jointer, and a driver. I had 4 things that you could do, and they could call you up with independent signals. You can go anywhere, there's a job, there or anywhere, you know. Yeah, I think that was the best part of it. Yeah. Well, the moment you're on a troop ship, like the Wandana, and we took all that secret stuff to northern Queensland, the moment we got out of the heads, we were entitled to the Pacific Star one day. But they lost a lot of our paperwork in there. It was secret to the point that the Wandana carried a lot of cable, all the telescopic poles were one on one to take the place of adding to a telegraph pole, you know, and fit a lot in the ship, all the wire, all the insulate, all that. And when we got out of the heads here, we were picked up by 2 corvettes. Those corvettes made sure we got through there. At that time, 43, so submarines from Japan were lurking around over there. Centaur had been sunk. And same in Darwin. We were in Darwin during the bombing and weren't given it. A lot of people got it later on in the last 10 years. But anyway, I said rather than argue, I cut the last at all. I'm quite happy. I've got the one I wanted was the one there with the bar, Western Pacific. That's all that suited me. Let them know I was in the Pacific. The Western Pacific took in Borneo and all those places too. Jeff, I just now on my own now. I have a couple of girlfriends that try and help me, you know. But living alone is not much fun. It's not. I don't begrudge anything in my life. I think life's been good to me. The army was good. DVA has been fantastic. They never wavered once. I was declared a EDA, which is extremely disabled, a long while ago. I got the gold card a long while ago. I've got no, I'm very happy with my life. I've got 2 good kids, 4 good grandchildren. Yeah, I'm giving my car to my grandson. I think I'll have my licence in 1 more year. I saw the doc yesterday, as a matter of fact. He said, you'll be right? He said, you're the fittest bloke I've seen, he said. So there you go. The 5 of us went over to America. We played in California, we played in Nevada. Where was the other place we played? Anyway, and those bowls are different to over here, you know. They're playing on parks. That's why they look after the grass. And they thought we were all so good drinking beer. The first home we went into, they had beer stuck to the wall looking for the Aussies, you know. Of course, a couple of beers and that's all we needed. But they were wonderful to the Aussies, you know. Most Americans won't take you into their home. They take you to the club like that, but they took us into their homes, you know, and they treated us like wonderful. The Association of Queensland, they knew all about us being there, etc., etc. But when we come back, they decided it was unofficial. So we had a cameraman from the Queensland newspaper, Brian Church, and he was the top bloke, Brian Church and Courier, and we had the cameraman with us. They used to pull a tractor out on the green to roll the green, a tractor, eventually on a bowling green. Good God. No, we had a good time there. I went back about sometime later, and I played in the singles over there. And I went right down to the last four, and a young kid of 16 knocked me off. Yeah. But anyway, they were good to the Aussies. They thought the Aussies were great. We were what bowls was all about, you know. Yeah, I know it was a great experience. But I played for Queensland many times. Queensland RSL bowls, which is strong, 20 or 30 times, you know. I won 19 club championships with Wells Hill and Algester. Singles three times, runners-up 3 times. So I've got no complaints with bowls. No, bowls was something I was good at. I don't mind who knows. I coached a lot of players. Coached a lot of lady players, and they all turned out to be champs. Very relaxing. Bowls is so wonderful. You meet 4 new bowlers every time you play. We were going to Disneyland there when we were over there with the team, and something like there was these 4 blokes walking towards us, and we knew them from West Australia. You know, meet so many people in lawn bowls, and you know, so it's a great sport. It's a sport of skill. People think, oh, this is easy. Game of skill, mate. But I have great faith in the young people of Australia, even though there's a lot of, what do you call them, Rob, nerds or something around the place, and they get all the publicity of being so bad. But I think if we get caught in another war, which I'm sure we will, they'll be around, they'll help. I have great faith in the young people, yeah. I was only going, well, I went for adventure. I thought it was going to be fun. And I soon found out it wasn't. Yeah. As far as reunions and that, I've been to a few. But being up here now, they're all in Melbourne, our reunions. I went down there quite a few. Well, I'm the only one left. I flew to Melbourne most Anzac days early on. There was Barry. There was Barry Greenwood. There was Kenny Loebig, who had a terrible death. And then twin boys, Tom and Frank Nye, they went to Japanese interception radio. Ken and Barry, they went into construction like I joined up with them later, caught them up later. Now they're all dead, but Ken Loebig, he was a real hair and scare Aussie soldier. I loved him, mate. He joined the PMG when he got out of the army, with delivering telegrams on his motorbike. Gosh, he ran under a truck and they decapitated him. Couldn't believe it. I went to that funeral. It was the first funeral I've ever been to. Awful. Yeah. But as for the other fellas, we had reunions going right up until the 50th. So that'd be around 80, something like that. And now they're all gone. All those fellas are gone. There was only 90 of us, and they're all gone. And the 5 I joined the army with, that included me. I'm the only one, mate. Yeah. But I've got my kids and grandchildren. I have a girlfriend, and well, life's not so bad, is it? Huh?